again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Tuesday and Ross Gregory joins us. Hi, Ross. Oh, Ross, you've gone off. He's disappeared. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll play the ads and see what we can do on the technical side of things. Bear with us, folks.
A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria. Their website is mrvickies.co.uk. If you want to contact the guys, email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Big thanks to New Workwear. They are an agile and dedicated workwear provider launched in 2018. For more information, go to the website newworkwear.com. Big thanks, as always, to Media Arts for the help with the video side of things. If you want to support the channel, hit the subscribe button, become a subscriber today. Hit the thumb up under the video, which likes the video, and click share to share to your other social media. Click join if you want to become a member of the channel for as little as $1.99, or take a one-off payment for the cult membership. You can get in via this QR code if you've got a smartphone, or look for membership pack on the website, nufcmatters.com. What do you get for your one-off £25 payment? You get a scarf, a pen, and a cup, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. Don't forget, if you want a car sticker, all you need to do is subscribe to the show and then email John at NUFC Matters, and he will post you a free car sticker out. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And we also support the food bank on this channel. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is the virtual matchday bucket where you can make a virtual donation 365 days of the year. The new Alan Shearer raffle is underway. 150 tickets at £1 a ticket. You could win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball from the 260 dinner. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. We've got a few events coming up. August the 5th sees Gavin Peacock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £10, and you can get them now from nufcmatters.com. Our Christmas event takes place on the 7th of December at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and that's an evening with Frank Clark. Tickets are £15 and available from nufcmatters.com. Finally, Waddle, Keegan, Beardsley and Friends, the class of 84, is on at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on Westgate Road in Newcastle on Thursday, January the 23rd. Tickets are now available from the Tyne Theatre and Opera House.co.uk or telephone 0844 2491 000. That's the box office telephone number 0844 2491 000.
Okay, Ross should be back with us. Little internet issues with Ross, but he's there, he's moving. Hi, Ross, you okay?
Hi, Steve, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. It's not the greatest, but we will persevere. England and Australia playing out this last day of a fascinating opening test game in the Ashes, and Australia need 62 to win. England need 3 more wickets, and new ball coming in 2.5 overs. So it's going to be an interesting finish. I'll keep you up to date with that as we progress. But as always, an hour of Newcastle United conversation to be had, and we tend to cover the stories in the Chronicle on this show with Ross. And Antonee Robinson is a left back that Newcastle United have supposedly been looking at in the last few weeks. He is at Fulham, and Newcastle, of course, looking to strengthen the left back department despite Dan Burn having a great season. He's still got 12 months to run on his Fulham deal. He is attracting interest from elsewhere, but it is understood that the American international could be available for perhaps as little as 30 million, maybe a little bit less if he wants to move. So that's a one that the Chronicle are running with there, Ross.
Yeah. The guys on the desk ran that one. I think at lunchtime today. Antonee Robinson's is somebody who Newcastle have been linked with previously. They've got a bit of a long-standing interest in him. And left back, as we know, is a position that Newcastle are interested in strengthening. I know they've got Dan Burn and Matt Targett and Paul Dummett and Jamal Lewis who can all play there. But we've said before, it's about for Newcastle this season. It's about upgrades. It's about where can they get that extra 1 or 2 or 3% out of the team in terms of signings. Where can they improve them small percentage points that they need to maintain a push around the top four. And Antonee Robinson is somebody who's like I say, he's been on the radar for a while. He is very highly rated. I think if you cast your mind back a couple of 3 years, he very nearly got a big move from I think it was Wigan at the time to AC Milan, but only from to fail his medical. There was an issue with his a heart issue or something like that. I can't quite recall the exact issue, but he was a teenager then. He very nearly got a big move to Milan. Since then, he's kind of rebuilt his career a little bit, and he's done well at Fulham. And I think it was Aaron Stokes who did the piece for the Chronicle today. Is bang on when he says that they can potentially look at getting him on a reduced fee, and it would be an interesting signing. I'll be honest, I don't know if he's I've seen little bits of Antonee Robinson over the years, and he's one of those players that you always keep an eye on because you have heard Newcastle linked with him in the past. I'm not saying he's not a good player, because he is. He's a very good player. He's a Premier League player, so he obviously is. But personally, is he a bigger upgrade on Dan Burn, Matt Targett, all these sort of players who Newcastle currently have? I'm not sure. Personally, that's just my opinion. I think there's probably better left backs out there, but if he's available on a good fee, and he is somebody that the club's identified for a period of time now, then it might be something that could come to fruition this summer.
Yeah, okay, interesting one. We will watch that with interest. James Maddison's been linked for the last 3 windows, and lots of chat about him. Of course, international week, and so Maddison sitting alongside Kieran Trippier and Callum Wilson on the bench last night. Talk about him potentially going to Tottenham and favouring Tottenham as opposed to a move to Newcastle. But a lot of it's just paper talk, Ross. We're in the last chance saloon, I think, with this one, aren't we, really? And, Maddison's future is going to be decided sooner rather than later.
Yeah, look, he's going to move this summer. There's no doubt at all about that. He's not going to be staying at Leicester with not long left on his contract, especially after they've been relegated. They need to raise funds themselves. They need to sell in order to be able to strengthen. But obviously, their revenues are going to drop, falling into the Championship. So James Maddison will leave Leicester this summer. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The question is, where will he end up? And I still think he will come to Tyneside. I still think he will end up at Newcastle. I think he's obviously going to be a player who's got a lot of interest in him. He's going to have plenty of clubs chasing after him, as you would expect a current in England international. If Newcastle can agree on the fee, which I think will probably be the ultimate sticking point with Maddison, Leicester are going to want top money from him, even though they've been relegated. They're still going to hold out for a good fee from him. Whether Newcastle are prepared to push that boat out, or they decide, look, we want to go elsewhere, and we want to look for another alternative, which we can potentially get in at better value, then that's going to be the decision. But I've seen tweets and messages this week and today saying that Newcastle want that deal done by the end of this week, or they don't want a saga dragging on. The only way I can see this going through it is a transfer saga. I can see this going all the way through to maybe deeper into the window. I'm not saying right to the end, but you can see this rumbling on for another 2-3 weeks potentially, because Leicester are going to be holding out for top money. And you often find that it only takes one transfer deal to go through somewhere, whether it's in the Premier League or whether it's in Europe, and it creates a kind of domino effect. Newcastle won't be held to ransom on any player, and we've seen that plenty times over the years, over the last year or two since the ownership came in. They will not be held to ransom for players. They have an understanding of valuation of a player, whether it's Anthony Gordon or Sven Botman or whoever it is. They have a valuation that they put on players, and just because they've got the extra financial weight behind them since the takeover, it doesn't mean that they're going to just pay out silly money for players. That they're going to do things right and do things by the book in a budget in a manner that they feel is fitting financially. So I can see this one with Maddison going on and on a little bit longer, but I still think he will end up at Newcastle.
Interesting article from Lee Ryder in the Chronicle today, just saying that Newcastle are refusing to budge after being quoted huge fees for summer transfer targets, including Maddison. They're saying that, the Foxes are sticking to their guns on an asking price of more than 60 million on Maddison. Also, Dominik Szoboszlai, talking about him having a release clause of 60 million. I mean, are these prices likely to put Newcastle United off, Ross, do you think? Losing you there, Ross. We're losing you there, Ross. I'll repeat the question. I'm not sure whether you'll have heard the question or not, but I'm just saying, do you think the £60 million price tags will put Newcastle United off?
Will put players. I don't think it will put Newcastle off, Steve. I think Newcastle will pay 60 million for a player this summer. I think whether they can afford to pay 60 million for two players, if that makes sense, for to spend $60 million on Maddison and 60 million on another player and potentially a third player, I think that's the issue. But I do think they will spend 60 million. I wouldn't be surprised if they went close or broke the transfer record, which is obviously currently stands for Alexander Isak. I think they'll absolutely go to 60 million if they feel it's the right player at the right price. I just don't think that they're prepared necessarily with James Maddison at this point to go there. It's still very early in the window, and they want to weigh all their options. And obviously, Leicester have got a sell-on clause, I believe, with Maddison as well. So they're going to have to keep pushing that price up to get more money in. But yeah, I'm sure to go to that with Alexander Isak, and I think they will again this summer.
I'm probably going to have to play like another little section of ads, Ross, because your internet's dipping right out again. I'm not sure whether you want to try and get back onto your hotspot again, because I know that's what dipped out before. But I don't want it to spoil the show for people back home if they can't make out your answers clearly. So I'll let you flip over to that now, mate, and I'll stick another couple of ads on.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Okay, Ross, we'll go again. Szoboszlai as well. I mean, talk of a £60 million, release kind of clause on his contract to even start that ball rolling. Again, that name's still getting bandied around as a potential signing for Newcastle, isn't it?
It is, Steve. Yeah, I'm just double checking. Can you hear me? Am I back, or can you hear me back?
It's not great at all, mate. I don't know what's the matter today. It could just be the weather with your internet connection, because you don't have the greatest internet connection. I know that's for certain. So we'll just have to go with it, Ross, for now, and we'll, people at home will understand, I'm sure.
Yeah, so sorry about that guys. I'll hopefully get up and running again in a little bit. Yeah, look, Newcastle is still very much interested. The release clause, and there is talk of the release clause having a deadline set on it as well. It'll only be active for a period of another week or 10 days. But yeah, there is a release clause there. Is that a wicket in the cricket there, Steve?
Caught and bowled, mate. A third opportunity for Root. I feel so sorry for him. The first one came at 100 miles an hour and he dropped it. The second one was so low and it was a half chance. But this one, straight down the middle, almost a carbon copy, but just a little bit slower, into his hands. He fumbled it and he caught it into his midriff. But that's 2 wickets remaining now for Australia. They are 53 away from winning the test. Honestly, this has been a fantastic game of cricket. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, this game, but Alex Carey, 50 balls he faced, and he's gone by 20 runs and into the tail enders very much so now. So hopefully I'll keep you with this. Hopefully we might see an Ashes first test win whilst we're live on the show. But yeah, go on, Ross. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, so Szoboszlai, look, he's a talented player. He's got a release clause in his contract. Again, it's up to Newcastle whether they decide whether he's worth that. I think 60 million for Szoboszlai is a lot of money to pay. I think it's he's unproven in England, and he's still only 20 years old. I do think that's a lot of money to pay, and they'll have to weigh up whether 60 million for Szoboszlai is better than 60 million for Maddison, and that's going to be the decisions. I don't think they'll be able to bring both in.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer. We knew that from the very start, and we will watch those 2 particular names with interest. Tom Dixon brings up another one, which of course is Barella. Again, a story which has been covered quite heavily in the Evening Chronicle. For Ross, is there anything on Nicolo Barella? Do you think we'll get him, Ross?
I don't think Newcastle will get him. Unfortunately, he's a great player. He's an absolute top class midfielder, and he's somebody who would probably grace pretty much, in my opinion, grace every top team in Europe. I think he's that good. Can Newcastle pinch somebody like that from underneath the noses of some of Europe's elite? This is who's played in Champions League finals, who's still in prime of his career. He's only 25, 26. I think Inter Milan will obviously desperately want to hold on to him. Whether they can financially turn down big money because of the financial situation that they're in at the minute is an interesting one. But if Newcastle are coming in with bids of 50 million, I don't think that'll be anywhere near acceptable for Inter Milan. And if Inter Milan do decide to sell Nicolo Barella, I think there'll be a rush on for his services. I think there'll be a bit of a bidding war, and I'd be surprised if Newcastle were able to secure that one. It feels one like that. It feels like you've got to get it done quickly. You've got to get it done quickly and under the radar, and tie it, seal the transfer before anybody's kind of alerted to it. Now that clubs have been alerted to it, I just think that one would be a really difficult one to do. Look, I think if Newcastle could sign Barella, it would be an absolutely unbelievable piece of business. And hats off to the club for even getting close to it. And I really do hope that they can push that one through. But I'd be really surprised. And if to answer the question, I don't think it's going to quite happen.
Mick Gilchrist, good evening, says 15% owed to Norwich from the sale of Maddison. So Leicester will try and squeeze every penny out. Levy is difficult to deal with, though. Ian McKenna says Barella is certainly the type of player we are looking to bring in, but 50 million is a bit of a joke. David Cook says, are the stories about Robello real? I wasn't sure that he was an Eddie type of player.
Not sure on him. I don't know. I'm not sure who Robello is. He's not someone who's come across my understanding, my knowledge, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that one, David, I'm afraid.
David McLeod says, if Maddison's in 2 minds whether to join a Champions League team or Spurs, let him go to Spurs. He'll regret it in the end, which I think a lot of people are saying. Barella would be outstanding, says Mick. Barella is closer to 100 million rather than 50 million, says would-be Farmer. Is Barella's £70 million release clause true? Don't know.
I don't know about whether he's got a release clause in. If he has got a release clause and it's 70 million, and Newcastle can go to 70 million, I'd be absolutely snapping their hands off, because I agree with Woodby Farmer. I think he's much closer to 100 million than he is 50 million. I understand you try to get players in on the cheap slightly, and you've got to make your opening bids and everything else like that. But Barella is a world class player. Like I say, he would be a valuable addition to any team. So if you could get him for 60, 70 million, even 80 million, I think it's good business.
Eamon says, lads, the young left back at Chelsea, Lewis Hall, is outstanding. I wonder, would Chelsea sell him to Newcastle if they were interested? It's interesting. Do you think the likes of Chelsea would do business with Newcastle? I mean, Newcastle did make a big thing of going down there in the early days of ownership of the club. Amanda and Mirdad were seen schmoozing, if you like, with Todd Bowley. So, building up a relationship with one of the so-called Big Six, before our gate crashing of that particular party was fairly obvious, and it was front and centre, Ross.
Well, clubs do business between each other, at the top end. It has to be, if the deal's right, then clubs will always do business. So, you could look at Arsenal and Man City, and there's obviously a bit of a relationship there with Arteta and Guardiola and everything else like that. But Man City sold two of their top players, if you like, in Sterling in Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus to Arsenal. They sold Sterling to Chelsea. So teams will do business with each other at that top end if they think it's the right deal for them. Obviously, Man City weren't particularly perturbed about losing them three players to what you would class as rivals. It might be slightly different with Newcastle coming up as the new kids on the block, and people feeling a little bit threatened by them. But if the money's right, if the deal's right, then absolutely, they will do it. I'm always wary of you go to those clubs, and why would they sell you this player for that money? Why would they sell you one of their best players? Or are they selling you somebody who they think they don't need anymore, they think's not up to the standard? Similar with, like I say, with Arsenal and Man City, Pep Guardiola wasn't bothered about losing Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko when he's got people like Haaland coming in, is he? So, there were obviously players that they didn't particularly rate. He wasn't bothered about losing Raheem Sterling, particularly, and that's been proven to be right as well, because he's had a poor season at Chelsea. So you've always got to be a little bit wary of signing other people's cast-offs, I think.
John Askew says, evening everyone. Ross, do you think the obvious intent in Saudi Arabia to strengthen their league will have a bad effect on the Premier League in the future? Players in their prime might be tempted by greater riches. It's a good point.
It is. It's a real thorny subject, this one, isn't it? And obviously Newcastle's owners right at the heart of it. Look, you look at some of the players who've moved to the Saudi league, and some of them are obviously right at the back end of their careers, and are going for a huge payday and one last payday, and your Ronaldo's a perfect example of that. The one which is really, really quite interesting is Ruben Neves, a player who has a host of clubs interested him in Europe and could be playing Champions League football. Barcelona were rumored to be very close to signing him, and Newcastle have been linked with him in the past. Man United have been linked with him in the past. He's a good player. He's a very good player, and get him for 40, 45 million is good money as well. Is decent business. So for him to apparently kind of eschew all that options in Europe to sign to move to Saudi, it's got to be financial. That's the only reason he's going there. It'll be financial, and that's an interesting one in terms of looking at it and thinking, well, this player, this might be an attraction now for players who are in the prime of their career, who are not 33, 34, 35, but are in the mid-20s and at the peak of their powers. Having said that, we've seen it before with China, with the Chinese league, and lots of players going there, and it was short-lived. It didn't last for various different reasons, which are probably completely different to what's going on in Saudi Arabia at the minute. But I don't think it'll have too much of a detrimental negative effect on the Premier League in the short term, because this is still a well-paid league. It's still where players can make a lot of money and can play at the best competitions at the peak of their powers. So I don't think short term, long term, you never know. You never know how long something like this will last, and if it becomes something that's long standing and that has a little bit of sustainability about it, then you never know. It could become a major player in the football game.
Suggestions as well, of course, that players could be bought by Saudi teams and loaned back to Newcastle. I think that's, it could happen to anybody, of course, but lots of people putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. There's all sorts of rumors and conspiracy theories all over social media and all over everywhere else. Look, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are looking to promote their own league. They're looking to develop it, and they're looking to make it a major player in world football. That's obvious. Whether it's what the impact is long term and short term on the Premier League and Newcastle United, we can't really tell yet. I think it's more about their overarching strategy of improving the game and bringing extra revenue and finance into their game as part of their long-term project, rather than something that's a little bit conspiracy theory led with Newcastle, unfortunately.
Yeah, lots of stuff coming up about Chelsea as well. Question, Steve: why are PIF helping Chelsea out with a sale? Because in the end, they are making an enemy for the top 4 stronger, and there are no signs of any players coming in that will improve us. I think it's early days with that particular relationship. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think they've made an ally of Chelsea rather than an enemy of Chelsea, but we'll just have to wait and see how it all pans out. Just cutting back to the cricket, 2 huge sixes from one of the tail enders. I didn't quite catch who it was in bat. It's the captain. So they need 37 wins to win, 37 runs to win, 2 wickets remaining. We've got the new ball now with at least 14 overs to go. There's going to be a winner tonight, and the moment the way Australia are playing, it may well be them. So we'll watch that with interest. Back to individual players. Tom Dixon says, Ross, is there anything on goalkeeper Josh Griffiths from West Brom?
Not one that I've heard. Not one that I've heard about, Tom. So again, I couldn't comment too much on that one. I think Newcastle obviously have got a quite well stocked in the goalkeeping department. Nick Pope is the number one, and he's had an exceptional season. You've got Martin Dubravka, you've got obviously Loris Karius, and you've still got Carl Darlow on the books as well. So there's loads of options for Newcastle in that goalkeeping department. I'd be surprised if it was a priority this summer, but then again, I didn't expect it to be a priority last summer. And look what happened with Nick Pope coming in. So you never know, but I've not really heard anything about the West Brom player.
Another article that's on the Chronicle website is by Kieran Kelly about Simon Clapper, the new St. James's Park Chief Financial Officer who was come in, and he was apparently quite useful in helping create the infrastructure that went to the next level at Leicester City a few years back. And they're saying that he could be quite useful. The tone of this article is saying he could be quite useful with regards to the stadium expansion, Ross.
You haven't read this. It's certainly worth a read. Kieran does these pieces quite well, where he goes kind of behind the scenes a little bit, and he speaks to, or he gets information, or speaks to people who are slightly lesser well known, if you like, and they kind of do a lot of work behind the scenes. So this one's an interesting one. Another good read by Kieran, and what it does highlight for me, Steve, again, is that backroom team that Newcastle are pulling together, or have pulled together over the last year, 18 months. it's as important, in my opinion, it's as important as the team that's recruited on the pitch. Because if Newcastle don't get the foundations right behind the scenes, if they don't get the right executive team in place off the pitch, then the club will never grow. It will never grow to the levels that it needs to. And Newcastle's executive team and directors and direction under Mike Ashley for 14, 15 years was limited. It was, there was people in place who they didn't have the support around them. There wasn't necessarily the expertise in certain areas. The commercial arm and the marketing arm and everything else like that just dried up. It wasn't driven forward. And Newcastle are suffering still as a result of that, even after the takeover. So to get the right people in place behind the scenes is really, really important. And we all know what's needed with St. James's Park. It needs refurbished. It needs redeveloped. It needs whether it's a 70,000, whether it's a 75,000, whether it's just an extra 5,000 or 6,000 seats in, it does need the capacity improved. And to get that, I think they're going to have to be quite skillful. They're going to have to work with a lot of planning and with the architects and everything else like that to do it on the current site. So the more people with expertise, the better, because improving the facilities, improving the stadium, and getting more people into the ground is an absolute must, and has to be and is a priority for Newcastle moving forward.
Fascinating game this. It's another 4 for Australia, but we've just had a drop catch by Stokes. It was another difficult catch. 30 more runs to win this game now for Australia. 13 overs remaining and 2 wickets needed by England. It's like one day cricket at its best, but it's a test match. Fascinating. Bruno, often linked with a move away, it seems, rather than renewing his contract, and ludicrous suggestions that Newcastle would potentially use Bruno in some kind of makeshift to bring Rafinha in. I mean, where do these stories come from, Ross? It fascinates me at times that somebody who seems so happy would even contemplate leaving. And we've now got ex-players coming out saying that they also feel that Newcastle will be constantly batting away interest for Bruno. What's your take on all of that?
I've said this for a while now with Bruno. I think, look, he's an exceptional player, and he's somebody that is going to attract attention, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, if you want your players to be at the peak of their powers, you want your players to be playing well and attracting interest from elsewhere, as long as you've got the means and the wherewithal and the ability to keep hold of them. And look, this is nothing new, and certainly with a club like Newcastle, where they're not quite at the top table yet. I know we're in Champions League. I know it's been a remarkable transformation over the last 18 months to 24 months. But Newcastle still aren't an established top level, European team. That's just the fact of life. They're not Barcelona, they're not Real Madrid, they're not, Bayern Munich, they're not Man United or Liverpool or people of even of that stature, clubs of that stature. So when a player is performing particularly well, like Bruno is, and he's another one who could quite comfortably, in my opinion, fit into a lot of the top teams in Europe. Newcastle are going to just have to put up with some of this. They're going to have to get used to interest being shown in their players, because if they're playing well and Newcastle are not quite at that top table yet, then other clubs will come sniffing around. Now the Bruno ones, it's clear that he's happy on Tyneside. It's a non-story for now in that sense, but it will come around again until he gets his new contract sorted, and even after that, it might not put the story to bed. But while he's at Newcastle and while he's playing well, there will always be stories linking him with other clubs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and just touching on the Brazilian international team, great to see Joelinton making his debut and capping it with a goal there, Ross.
Yeah, who saw this coming here? Who saw this one coming? A couple of years ago.
Nobody on here.
Joelinton, the non-scoring striker, would be transformed into a Brazilian international who scores on his debut, albeit in a bit of a nothing game, but take nothing away from him. Fantastic to see. Great transformation from the player. And regardless of what happens with his Brazilian career now, regardless of whether he becomes a permanent fixture in the Brazil squad or wins another 30, 40 caps, or whether he kind of disappears from the radar a little bit. Regardless, it's a great positive story. It's memory that he will now have and be able to treasure for the rest of his life, and it's really fitting reward for a player who's stayed positive, who's put so much work and effort and everything else like that into his career, who's stuck at it in difficult times. I just think it's a fantastic story.
If Bruno is signing a 200 grand a week contract, are we really that far away from Rice's wages, says Ian? I mean, not sure there's confirmation that Bruno is going to be signing £200,000 a week contracts at Newcastle. I mean, certainly when Newcastle are banging on about financial fair play, it'll be interesting to see whether that ever happens. But look, it's crazy money, isn't it? Big move today for Arsenal's perspective. Putting a £90 million bid in for Declan Rice, and that's been turned down, Ross. I mean, Newcastle, I think, are a little bit away from paying those kind of wages at the moment. Yeah,
they were away from paying those kind of transfer fees, I think, and they were away from that kind of wage structure as well. And you've got to be careful, because once you break the wage structure for one player, then all of a sudden another player wants it, and a third player wants it, and you create something that can spiral a little bit out of control unless you've got your finances in complete order. And Newcastle's finances aren't in complete order at the minute. Yes, there's a new sponsorship deal come in, and it's a really big sponsorship deal in kind of the terms of where Newcastle have been previously, and it's going to affect their ability to attract better players and spend more money in a positive way, undoubtedly. But one step on a road where your Arsenals and your Man Uniteds and your Liverpools and even your Spurs and obviously Man City, they're so much further down that road and they've been down that road for a long time, that Newcastle are just playing catch up, and it will take a little bit of time. But like I go back to what I said previously with the people that they brought into place off the pitch and behind the scenes, and a lot of the work that's been done there, which doesn't always get seen, then I've got no doubt Newcastle will close that gap on Arsenal and City and Liverpool and be able to compete with them on wages and on transfer fees as well over a period of time.
Another half chance there. Goes begging for England. 29 more runs to win for Australia. Still on a knife edge this game. Benny says the way our recruitment is going, Minty and potentially the lad from West Brom. This time next year, our signings may well get the guys returning from loan. This is what well run looks like, which is a good point as well. With 1 year left and the financial troubles they have, they should be snapping our arm off for 50 million, just with regards to James Maddison. John Arce has surprisingly heard no interest in Joelinton. Why wouldn't they want him, especially at his age? Ross, where do you think Kim Min-jae will go? Of course, linked with Newcastle and Manchester United.
There's a little sniff of Bayern Munich, isn't there? Bayern Munich might be interested in him, so that might be another one. Again, he's a player who's seemingly in demand, and will have a pick of clubs across Europe. But Bayern Munich seems to be one of the big favourites for his signature at the minute.
Yeah, Ross, what do you think about the huge restructuring of the network, the scouting network, so more organised throughout even the UK? Is it the way forward, says Barry?
Oh, it's 100% the way forward, yeah. It's a restructuring which has been obviously much, again, one area that had been neglected under previous owners and ownership and regimes. There's been the scouting network, and Newcastle's ability to attract, or to recognise and scout young players across the UK and get them into the club. So I think that's the impact that you're seeing. I think off Dan Ashworth coming in, who's meticulous on that side, who's on youth structure and youth development, and scouting and recruitment is a key part of that these days as well. Long gone are the days where you could just whistle down a pit and a number 9 striker would jump out. It's a much more scientific approach these days, using data, using a lot more techniques, and Newcastle just needed to step into the 2020s, to be honest. A lot of their processes and recruitment was still stuck 10, 12 years ago probably. So the restructure has been great. It's been great to see. And you look at some of the names that are now working in the club, people who some of us may know from around the scenes and whatever. And there's some good people in there, some really good, talented people in there who have the best interests of Newcastle United at heart.
Second new ball's been taken by England, 27 runs for Australia. As I said, it's on a knife edge. Would you be happy with Lascelles to move on, says John?
From a football perspective, yes, probably, as long as you bring somebody else in who's better. And I think Newcastle will. From a club perspective, I think Jamal Lascelles has contributed a heck of a lot over the years to Newcastle. In terms of his leadership, in terms of what he's brought to the dressing room, the changing room, plus what he's done on the pitch as well. Don't forget, he's a Premier League player. He's a very good player. You get to a certain level, and that might be your ceiling, and it might be that this is, Jamal Lascelles has kind of reached his ceiling, but he's a very, very good player who's been a great servant to Newcastle. And if and when he does leave the club, and I assume it will be this summer, I hope his departure's treated with the respect that he deserves for what he's done for Newcastle over the last few years.
Roger, good evening, says Ross, how many more personnel do you think we'll manage to add to our commercial team before next season? I think it's ongoing, isn't it?
It is. I've got no idea about it on numbers, to be honest, but they'll keep working behind the scenes, because it's an important part of modern day football, in terms of being able to provide the finances and provide the links that ultimately give Eddie Howe or whoever else is in charge of recruitment the platform for them to be able to go and bring the best players in to shine on the pitch. So yeah, it'll certainly be an ongoing process, I would have thought, Steve.
Roger also says, do you think the priority is centre midfield, defensive centre midfield over left back? Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I think the centre midfield is the key priority, whether it's a defensive midfielder or somebody who can play as a sort of an 8, who can get forward and back. But I do think that's the priority this summer. You looked at the numbers last season, you looked at the resources, certainly in the second half of the season when John Joe Shelby left and wasn't really replaced. Bruno was struggling with niggles and knocks. Sean Longstaff picked up a knock. Joelinton had nicks and knocks and niggles as well. And you were left with basically, for 3 positions, you were left with Bruno, Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock, Joelinton, and maybe and Elliot Anderson could fit in there. It was really, really quite light on bodies towards the end of the season. So it's absolutely a place that they need to strengthen, that they will strengthen, and that is a priority for them.
Barry also wants to know tonight, do you think there's a chance of getting Celez back at St James's Park in some kind of position? He's left QPR. Yeah,
I saw that. I was just reading that briefly, I think, last night. Yeah, I didn't read it in too much detail, so I don't know why he's left. But he's done he's a Newcastle hero. He's a Newcastle legend. I'd be surprised if he came into the club in an official capacity, but it'd certainly be nice to see him back up at St James's Park in some form.
Yeah, Benny watched a detailed HITC Sevens video on the Brighton method of recruitment. They redesigned their scouting department away from geographical scouts to positional scouts. It's amazing watch. I might give that I watch myself. Agree, Lascelles is a true leader, says John. Are we any closer, says Mark, to selling any of the deadwood from the squad? Darlow, Fraser and the likes. And Barry also wants to know, is there any news on outgoings? Would love to see the back of Fraser and Hendricks.
Yeah, there's, I mean, them negotiations and talks are constantly ongoing, and Newcastle are keen to sell players as well as recruit this summer. Carl Darlow's got a couple of clubs that are interested in him. Hull City are one, Middlesbrough, I believe, are another one as well. So he has got clubs sniffing around him. I've not heard too much about Ryan Fraser, but look, Newcastle, they know that there's 6 or 7 of the fringe players who might come back to the club this summer who won't be anywhere near the first team and will need to be moved on, whether that's on loan or permanent deals. Obviously, one of the issues is Newcastle are paying a certain level of wage that Championship clubs might not be able to match. So players are well entitled, once they've signed a contract, and they might have 2 years left on the contract or a year left on the contract on certain money. They're more than entitled to sit on that, on the rest of that contract and let it play out. So that'll be one issue that Newcastle have to solve. But there's at least, I would say you could probably name 6 or 7 players that Newcastle are looking to move on this summer.
John says, if you had a choice between Szoboszlai, Maddison or Diaby, and you can only buy one, which one would you take, Ross?
Maddison, I think. Szoboszlai looks a real talent, but I haven't really seen enough of him. Diaby, I'm not convinced that deal's going to come back, but you never know. I think Maddison I'll be honest, I was unsure on the Maddison link when it first came out. I just thought he wasn't quite what Newcastle needed at that particular time. But now that they're in the Champions League, having seen the way some teams try to set up against them in probably the final third of the season, I think someone like James Maddison would be ideal for Newcastle.
Do you think we'll go for Calvin Phillips at Man City?
I don't know. I like him. I personally like him. I don't know if Eddie Howe does. I don't know if Newcastle's recruitment side do. I'm not sure on that one, but I think he's a good player. He obviously didn't get that much game time at City last season for one reason or the other. He still won a treble, though, didn't he? He still won the Champions League and everything else like that. So would he be? I'm sure he was still relatively happy with his lot. I think he's a good player. He's obviously had injury issues and fitness stuff and whatever. So that might be an issue, but I think he's a cracking player.
17 runs required. Not looking good this at all now. Drop catches probably been the story of the day. I still think we declared too early in the first innings, but you've got to give them credit. Like they've gone for it. England, they haven't held back. David Cook says, any chance we can get Saudi clubs to take our Spa players for decent fees?
Oh yeah, well, get 40 million for Ryan Fraser or
maybe, you never know. Jeff Hendricks, I've seen him score.
Sell Jamal Lewis for 20 million. Yeah, you never know.
Crazier things have happened, haven't they, really?
It's a strange one, isn't it? The whole Saudi thing in terms of taking players, like we touched on before, it's a real interesting one. Newcastle though will have to be very careful with anything like that. Otherwise it would be deemed as breaking whatever rules that FIFA and whatever have in place. So it's an interesting one. But look, the Saudi League's keen on bringing players in. It looks like they just want to bring in the top players, though, the statement signings who are going to track the headlines, who are going to make a big difference. And I'm not sure that when they're looking at people like Benzema and Ronaldo that Ryan Fraser quite fits into that bracket.
It was a big day yesterday for Newcastle United fans in general who are season ticket holders. The renewals have now opened. I presume you will have seen a bit of the stuff that's been going backwards and forwards on social media. A bit of confusion, but it's not unusual when technology and humans are put together with something new that things can go a bit pear-shaped, mate. So I wouldn't put this down to Newcastle United. It's just human nature, isn't it? We're not all as good as the next man on the computer.
No, we're not. And look, is kind of systems move forward and technology advances and develops, then it's always going to, and anytime there's any kind of change as well, Steve, you know, everyone's always a little bit unsure about it. Everybody likes to keep things as they were and ticking on, as, you know, in the same form. So yeah, it doesn't surprise us that there's a little bit of confusion and disquiet and a few, you know, disgruntlement, but it's always going to be the same anytime that you try to move on and move things forward.
Yeah, and I guess as well, I mean, there was a lot of people, you know, up in arms because of ticket prices going up. But I mean, it's the price you have to pay for success, Ross. Surely, you know, there will be tickets going up. And I mean, you know, ultimately, season tickets on average were going up by about 5%, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge rise.
It's not, Steve. But at the same time, it would have made, just imagine that statement if Newcastle come out and said, look, we're freezing season ticket prices. We understand the cost of living and the issues that you know, hardworking folk in Newcastle and in the northeast are facing. So we're going to freeze our ticket prices as a thank you for everything that you did last season, etc., etc. Imagine the power of that statement if it had come out now. I don't know where Newcastle's finances are at. I really don't, you know, and so I'm not even gonna, you know, guess at it. But for the amount of revenue that they're going to make from putting their prices up by 5%, is it going to make that big a difference in terms of the commercial arm, in terms of how much their ability to run the club? Now that they're in the Champions League and they're expecting, and they've got the sponsorship and they've got the commercial elements, you know, improving, is that extra 5% that they're making on ticket sales going to make that much difference, or would it have made more of a difference to Joe Public if their ticket it stayed at the same price? That's all I really want to kind of say on that, because I do appreciate it's a thorny subject, but that's just the feeling that was left with me once I saw the statement and on the prices going up. It would have been great if they'd been able to freeze them as a thank you to fans and say, look, you know, appreciate it's tough times. But like I say, I don't know enough about Newcastle's finances. I don't know, they might need that extra 5% to I don't know, improve the club in some way that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's inevitable. That's and with the incoming in the commercial department, new people coming in, they will have a blueprint of what they want to do and how they've done it at previous clubs. So I guess, you know, that will play a big part. But yeah, look, it's happened. We've just got to get on with it. And if you're no good on the computer, like I said last night, get somebody to help you. There's always somebody who will help you, I am sure. Friendlies, we know that Rangers was announced. We did get one for Gateshead as well. It sold out really quickly. And I mean, you and I are both, you know, supporters of non-league football in this area, both been involved in it as well at different levels over the years, Ross. Great to see Newcastle, you know, going across to National League side Gateshead's ground, the International Stadium, on the 15th of July, 12:30 kickoff. 7,000 tickets sold out. I think a lot of people will be going, only 7,000 tickets? I thought it held more than that. Well, it does, but unfortunately, due to licensing regulations, you know, it's an undisclosed capacity, but they can't sell more than 7,000 tickets. So great to see them supporting Gateshead.
Oh, I was really pleased as that one, Steve. It really did. You know, again, I probably go back to it every time I'm on the program, but I remember, you know, you in under the Keegan era when Newcastle went to the Gateshead Stadium to play a pre-season friendly. I think it was the first or one of the first games after Sir Les had signed and after maybe Ginola and a couple of others. It was certainly around that time anyhow, and I remember being there and watching it. It was, you know, it's great to support teams like that, clubs like that who've got close links with Newcastle, but, you know, need a little bit of support and need a little bit of assistance at times, and that game will generate so much money for Gateshead. It'll increase their profile as well. make a big difference to a club like Gateshead. So I thought it was a fantastic touch from Newcastle to introduce that friendly.
David says last time he went to Gateshead he saw Guns and Roses. And Les, yes, the Newcastle versus Rangers game is being shown on NUFC TV. Got to get the Ben to bed now, says John. All the best. Cheers, John. Hope everything is going well with you and the Ben. Other friendlies that are rumoured at the moment as well. One against the Saudi Pro League side is supposed to be under consideration. There's also a match against Bruno's former club, Lyon, which has been mooted. Not confirmed yet, but the Shields Gazette covered both of those potential friendlies this week. So we will wait and see. Give us a quick shout out to where people can find your work and where people can log on. Is there anything going on at the Chronicle as well? Any polls or anything that we should be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, we've put one last push out for the big forum survey, getting our fans' feedback on all sorts of issues around the ground and stadium development and transfers and the ownership and everything else like that. So there's a big push of that. If you go into the Chronicles live blog today, I think there's a link to it. And there we've also so we're pushing that. That's going to be open for about another 24, 48 hours, and then we'll publish the results. We've had a phenomenal response on it, 8,000, maybe more responses up to that. So it gives a good indication of what the fan base are thinking and what the fan base are feeling. And we've got other bits and pieces that we'll be running all the way through the summer as well. We're going to launch in July, actually, which I think will be a nice little kind of series of pieces and votes and polls. We're going to do something on the academy, on the next generation of Newcastle players coming through, and who are the ones to watch, who are the ones that you would like to see get more exposure in the first team. We've seen obviously Elliot Anderson make a bit of a breakthrough this season. We've seen Lewis Miley on the cusp of the first team and make his debut in the last game of the season. There's a few more who are bubbling under there, so we're going to profile those, give them a little bit of exposure, and then again ask for fans and readers' opinions on should these players be given more of an opportunity? Do they need to go out on loan to develop their careers, and just give that next generation a little bit of a plug as well.
Great stuff. As always, Ross, pleasure to spend an hour with you, mate. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care, pal.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone.
Mr. Stevenson,